The world tilted sideways to make sure I don't reuse any names already in the channel's library. Check used names list. I checked every name in the list. The now writing the story with completely fresh names not found anywhere in the file. I put the kettle on at 6:30 that morning, the same as I do every morning, and that is when I noticed the notepad on the kitchen bench. It was not my notepad. I did not put it there. And what was written on it stopped me cold. My daughter's handwriting, 2 columns of numbers, the world figures beside dates, and at the bottom of the page, underlined twice, the words power of attorney. How long does it take to process? The world tilted sive in my dressing gown with the jug boiling behind me, and I read those words 3 times. Then I folded the notepad, put it back exactly where I had found it, and I made my tea. I did not say a word. The world tilted sideways, the 28th of April, 14 months ago now. And I want to tell you what happened after that because I think it matters, not just for me, but for anyone out there who has ever looked at someone they love and felt for the first time genuinely afraid. My name is Walter. I am 68 years old. The world tilted I lived in a 4-bedroom house on Pemberton Road in Havelock North, in the Hawke's Bay. My wife Norma passed away 4 years ago from a stroke. She went quickly. The world tilted sideways, a mercy, though I have never quite decided how I feel about that word in that context. We were married for 41 years. We built that house together, Norman and I. The world tilted is the section. We argued about the kitchen layout. We planted the macrocarpa hedge along the front boundary together on a cold July morning when our daughter was 3 years old. The world tilted is Caitlin. She is now 40 years old. She is married to a man named Trevor, and for the past 2 years they have been living with me. I want to be fair. When they first moved in, the world's the one who suggested it. Norma had been gone for 2 years at that point, and the house felt very large and very quiet. Caitlin said she and Trevor had been wanting to leave Wellington anyway. The world tilted sideways that Trevor could work remotely, and that it would be good for all of us. She said that last part with a kind of gentleness that I now understand differently than I did at the time. It was good. The world tilted sideways. Caitlin cooked most nights. Trevor fixed the guttering and repainted the back fence without being asked. We had meals together. The world tilted Siver to fish off the Napier Pier on Sunday mornings. I thought quietly to myself that maybe this was what the next chapter was supposed to look like. Though retired at 63 from the district council where I had worked in land management for 27 years. My superannuation, combined with what Norma and I had saved over the decades and a modest income from a rental property in Taradale, meant I was comfortable. Not wealthy, comfortable. The house in Havelock North was worth somewhere between $600,000 and $650,000 depending on the market. I knew that. Norma and I had refinanced once. The world tilted 2008 and paid the mortgage off completely by the time we were both 59. The house was ours outright, mine, now. The world to say something clearly before I go any further. I am not a man who forgets things. I am not a man who confuses dates or loses track of conversations. I read 2 newspapers a day. The word do the cryptic crossword most mornings. And I still manage the financial records for the Havelock North Rotary Club, which I have done for 11 years. I tell you this not to boast. The world tilted sideways, but because it comes relevant to what happened next. About 8 months after they moved in, Trevor started doing something that I noticed but did not immediately name. We would discuss anything to do with the house. Maintenance costs, the rates bill, the hot water cylinder that needed replacing. He would listen and then say things like, "You know, mate, that might be worth having someone else take a look at the numbers. Just to get a fresh set of eyes." Or, Caitlin and I were talking, we think it might be good to get your affairs a bit more organized. You know, just in case. The world tilted case of what I would ask. "Oh, you know," he would say, "just in case things get complicated down the track. I did not pursue it, I should have." Around the same time, the word began a habit of coming with me to my GP appointments. This was not something I had asked for the first time. The world Todway, she said she wanted to catch up with Dr. Hewson herself and thought we could go together. Dr. Hewson is my doctor, not hers. She had her own doctor in Wellington and had not transferred to a local practice, as far as I knew. But I did not say anything. I sat in the waiting room while she went in ahead of me. The world when I asked her later what they had talked about, she said, "Oh, nothing much. Just checking in." I was not alarmed. Not then. The notepad changed that. The world tilted sideways after I found it on the bench that April morning. I spent 3 days thinking very carefully about what I had seen and what it might mean. I am not someone who assumes the worst. I wanted to be wrong. The world, the possibilities over in my mind the way you turn stones on a riverbed. Slowly, one at a time, looking underneath. Power of attorney. How long does it take to process? On the 4th day, the whirl, something I had not done since Norma died. I drove into Hastings and I called in on my old friend Barney Tollerton, who had been a solicitor for 35 years before he retired. The world tilted sideways. We had played golf together on and off for the better part of 2 decades. He met me at the door in his gardening clothes and took one look at my face and put the kettle on without saying a word. I told him everything, the notepad, the GP appointments, the comments about getting my affairs organized, Trevor's suggestions about fresh eyes on the numbers, the way the world was really thinking about it. Caitlin had recently started asking questions about my Taradale rental in a way that felt less like curiosity and more like inventory. The word he listened to all of it without interrupting. Then he was quiet for a moment. He poured us both a cup of tea and he said, "Right. Here's what you need to know." The world tilted sighed it to me plainly. In New Zealand, a person cannot simply take over another person's financial or legal affairs because they want to. A lasting power of attorney, the WER had not already granted one, could only be set up with my full consent and while I had mental capacity. Without that, the world tin pathway available to someone wanting legal control over another adult's affairs was to apply to the family court for a welfare guardianship or property order under the Protection of Personal and Property Rights Act. The world to succeed with that kind of application, they would need to demonstrate that I lacked the mental capacity to manage my own affairs. Which I did not, but, Barney said carefully, the word application can still be made. It can cause significant disruption and stress even if it ultimately fails. The world tilt's daughter has been speaking to your GP. If there is even the suggestion of a pattern of concern documented somewhere, that could be used to support such an application. I went home that afternoon with a very clear picture in my mind of what was happening, and I made a decision. I did not confront Caitlin. I did not say anything to Trevor. I went into my study. The world tilted sized the door, and I began to make my own plans. The first thing I did was contact my own solicitor, a woman named Beverly Holt who works from an office on Haratonga Street in Hastings. The world used her twice before. Once when we refinanced and once when Norma and I updated our wills after she was first diagnosed. The world tilted sideways, telephoned Beverly the following morning and made an appointment for the next week. I told no one. At that meeting I explained the situation. Beverly asked me several direct questions. The world tilted sideways and carefully, and then said, "The most important thing right now is to make sure your legal position is completely clear and documented. Let's start with your will." The maiden new will 2 years after Norma died, which left everything to Caitlin. We discussed that. I told Beverly that I wanted to change it. She did not ask me whether I was sure. She simply said, "The word, tell me what you wanted to say." I thought about that for a long time before I answered. Norma and I had never had grandchildren. Caitlin had made it clear years ago, the world tilted sideways, that she and Trevor did not want children, which was entirely her decision and one I had never had any opinion about. There was no one else in the direct family line. The world tilted sideways was that I wanted to leave the Taradale rental property and a portion of my savings, $150,000, to the Norma Jean Faulkner Memorial Fund. The world tended to establish in Norma's name to support women re-entering the workforce after illness. The remainder of my estate, including the house, I would deal with separately. The WER had already decided how I was going to sell it. The world tilted sideways out of spite. Or not only out of spite, if I am being honest with myself, I had been thinking for several months before any of this came to a head. The Werther the Havelock North house still made sense for me. It was 4 bedrooms, I was one person. The garden was more than I could manage comfortably on my own and without Norma. The word homes had not been properly used in years. There was a village in Taradale, a retirement village called the Willows, where several people I knew had moved. The independent living units were genuinely comfortable, not the bleak institutional places I had always pictured when I heard the words retirement village. I had driven past it more than once. The word once, almost as a joke to myself, picked up a brochure from the display rack outside the leasing office. The brochure was still in the glove box of my car. Rang the Willows. The week after my meeting with Beverly, I spoke to a woman named Glennie's in their leasing office, who was warm and practical and did not treat me like I was confused or fragile. The world tilted sideways. She answered every question I had about the occupational right agreement, the weekly fees, the maintenance responsibilities, and what happened to the entry payment if I decided to leave. The world tilted time for me to walk through one of the available units. The unit was small but well designed, with a north-facing living room, a proper kitchen, 2 bedrooms, a single garage, a courtyard garden that would take me 40 minutes a week to maintain instead of 4 hours. The village itself had a bowling green, a library, and a workshop with woodworking tools. The world tilted sideways, which is something I had wanted to get back to for years. I stood in the courtyard of that unit on a Wednesday afternoon in late May and looked at the citrus trees in the corner and thought, this is not a diminishment, this is a choice. They made an offer that same week. I had already spoken to an agent, a young man named Pete Aldridge from a local real estate firm, about the Havelock North property. the word what I was doing and asked him to keep the listing off the public portals until I had the retirement village paperwork sorted. He was discreet and professional. We agreed on a price range. The world tilted sideways and he already had a buyer in mind, a family from Auckland who had been looking in the area and who were apparently very motivated. I want you to understand the timeline here because it matters. The world tilted found the notepad on the 28th of April. By the 30th of May, I had a signed agreement to purchase the unit at the Willows, conditional on the sale of the Havelock North house. The world tilteth of June, Pete had an offer from the Auckland family. 14 days after that, the sale was unconditional. I had told Caitlin and Trevor nothing. The world tilt to explain what that was like, those weeks. Living in the house with them, sitting at the dinner table, passing Trevor in the hallway in the morning, his cup of coffee in hand saying morning. The world tilted Sidon in his easy way, watching Caitlin water the tomatoes in the vegetable garden she had planted in my backyard and feeling the distance between us like a physical thing in my chest. The world tilt to feel triumphant. I want to be clear about that. What I felt was grief, not for the house, for the version of this situation in which it did not have to happen this way. The word loved being Caitlin's father. I had been present for it, genuinely present in a way that some men of my generation were not. I had gone to her school assemblies, had driven her to netball on Saturday mornings for 6 years. When she was 19 and her first serious relationship ended badly, the world tilted sideways. She sat in the kitchen and cried, and I sat with her and did not try to fix anything, just sat there, which is apparently what she needed. The world tilted sideways because afterward she told Norma it was the most helpful thing anyone had done. I treasured that. I do not know when it changed. I do not know if it was Trevor, the world tilted sideways, or something that was already there that I had not been willing to see. What I do know is what I heard that night, 3 weeks before I found the notepad. The world tilted sideways when I came in late from a Rotary dinner and they did not hear me come through the back door. The word had stopped to take off my shoes on the mat at the laundry door, the way I always do when I heard Trevor's voice from the kitchen. Clear, not loud, conversational. The thing is, the world actually need him to agree. If we can show the court that he's not managing properly, that's enough. The GP thing is already started, and Caitlin, her voice quieter but not uncertain. We're the house. If it goes through the trust, it gets protected, Trevor said, from him being able to do anything rash with it. I stood on that mat in my socks for a very long time. To put my shoes back on, I walked back down the path to my car, sat in it for 15 minutes. The world till drove to the BP on Napier Road and bought myself a pie and a coffee and sat in the car park under the fluorescent lights until I felt steady enough to go back inside. The world came in the second time. I was louder about it. They were watching television in the lounge. Everything was normal. I did not sleep that night. The world tilted sideways. What I thought about lying there was not the house or the money. What I thought about was Norma, about what she would have done. Norma was not a dramatic woman. She was precise and she was patient. The world tilted and she did not waste energy on emotions that were not useful. She would have said, find out exactly what the situation is, make sure you are thinking clearly, and then act. Don't react, act. The world tilted is what I did. Settlement on the Havelock North house was set for the 15th of July. The word to arrange storage for most of my furniture. The pieces I wanted to keep would go into the unit at the Willows. And I had already moved the things that mattered most: Norma's letters, the war photographs, my father's fly fishing rods, the wooden box my grandfather had made that sat on the mantelpiece. I had moved them to my car over several weeks, a few things at a time. The world till Tilman and Trevor were both out of the house. I told them on the 12th of July, 3 days before settlement. The world tills were at the dinner table. Caitlin had made a pumpkin soup, which I remember because the color of it stays in my mind. I waited until we had finished eating and then I said, the war need to let you both know something. I've sold the house. Settlement is this Friday. I've arranged a unit at the Willows in Taradale and I'll be moving in on Saturday morning. The world need to make other arrangements. The silence lasted. I counted approximately 11 seconds. Then Trevor said, I'm sorry, what? The house settled 3 days from now, I said. The new owners take possession on Friday afternoon. Caitlin put down her spoon. Her face had gone white. Dad, you can't have done that without, you can't just. It's my house, I said. Though I can. Trevor pushed back from the table. This is not, you can't do this, you haven't even, we have rights here. We've been living here, we've been contributing. We've been living here as my guests, I said. I've never charged you board. I've never asked for a contribution to the rates or the insurance or the maintenance. I've been glad of the company. The house was always mine to sell. Caitlin was crying. Trevor's face had gone red. He said several things that I am not going to repeat here. The world tilted sideways. The gist was that I was making an irrational decision, that I clearly needed help, and that he was going to speak to a lawyer. You're welcome to, I said. I've already spoken to mine. I cleared the table. I washed the dishes. I went to my room and I closed the door and I sat in the chair by the window and I looked out at the macrocarpa hedge and I breathed. They tried in the 3 days that remained. The Wayland came to my room that first night and knocked. I let her in. She sat on the edge of the bed and she said, "Dad, please, tell me what's happened. Where is this coming from?" The world tilted sideways. I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about the notepad. I thought about the night I stood on the laundry mat in my socks. I thought about 11 years of cryptic crosswords and the financial records for the Havelock North Rotary Club and Dr. Hewson's waiting room. "I heard you," I said. "The world till the 22nd of April. I came home from Rotary and I heard you both in the kitchen." She did not say anything. "I know about the power of attorney," I said. "I know about the plan to go to the family court. I know about the conversations with my doctor. I want you to know that I understand exactly what I am doing and why. I am not confused. The world tilt is not unwell. I am someone who found out that his daughter and son-in-law were planning to use the legal system to take control of his life and his assets, and I am acting accordingly." The world tilted sideways without speaking. I heard her and Trevor talking for a long time after that, their voices low, their words just below what I could make out through the wall. Trevor consulted a lawyer. The world tilted sideways as he said he would. The lawyer, to his credit, it seems, advised Trevor that they had no tenable grounds to challenge the sale. I had been assessed by my GP regularly, had no formal diagnosis of any cognitive impairment, had conducted the sale through a qualified solicitor and a licensed real estate agent, and had made all decisions while demonstrably capable. The world tilting to challenge. They moved out on the 14th. Caitlin took her things and Trevor took his and they drove away in a rented trailer without saying goodbye. The world tilted sideways. I was probably for the best for all of us. The world tilted 15th went through without any issue. Pete Aldridge rang me at 2:15 in the afternoon to confirm. I thanked him, drove to the Willows. The word carried the first box into my new courtyard. My neighbor in the unit next door, a man called Herbert, 73, the world tilt spent 30 years as a high school woodwork teacher in Gisborne, came out to introduce himself and ended up helping me carry in 4 of the heavier boxes. We had a beer on his patio afterward and he told me that his own son had not spoken to him in 8 years, over a disagreement about a boat. "The thing about children," Herbert said, "the world tilting at afternoon light on the citrus trees, is that we love them in a way that makes us vulnerable. That's not a flaw. But it means we also have to protect ourselves. I have thought about that many times since." The world Caitlin rang me on the 20th of July. I let it go to voicemail. She rang again 2 weeks later. I listened to both messages but I did not call back. In the second message she said she was sorry. The world tilted sideways. She said Trevor had convinced her that it was the right thing to do, that he had framed it as protecting me, and that she had gone along with it because she trusted him. The world tilted sideways. She said she understood if I didn't want to hear from her. I have not decided yet what I want to do with that. I replay it sometimes in the evenings when I'm sitting in the courtyard. The world tilted sideways, the citrus trees rustling in the Hawke's Bay nor'wester. Some nights I think that forgiveness is possible and that it matters and that Norma would want it. The were nights I think that being sorry you failed is not the same as being sorry you tried. I am not in a hurry to resolve it. The what I know is this: I am 68 years old. I wake up in the morning in a warm, well-designed unit that I chose for myself. I go to the workshop on Tuesday afternoons and I am learning slowly. The world, a decent dovetail joint. I have breakfast on Sundays with Herbert and his wife Gwyneth. I still manage the Rotary accounts. I still do the cryptic crossword. The world tilting has no file notes suggesting I am anything other than a physically healthy man of normal retirement age with normal retirement age concerns. I make my own decisions. The macrocarpa hedge I will not see again, and I find that I am at peace with that. Norma and I planted it, and it grew, and it did what we planted it to do. Some things can simply be that. The world tilted seven. I want to say to anyone listening who might be in a situation that sounds familiar. Not necessarily the same, but familiar in its shape. The world tilted 7. If you are an older person and something does not feel right, trust that. You do not have to be certain. You do not have to have proof laid out in front of you like a legal document. If the people around you are making you feel that your own judgment cannot be trusted, ask yourself who benefits from that belief. Then find someone outside that circle, a solicitor, an old friend. The world tilted sideways Community Legal Center, and ask them to help you think clearly. Your affairs are your affairs. Your house is your house. Your mind is your mind. These things belong to you. The world told in this country, if you use it before others use it against you, can protect them. The world tilted sideways, and is also worth knowing this: in New Zealand, granting a lasting power of attorney is something only you can decide to do, and only while you have capacity. If you have not granted one and you do not wish to, no one can take over your affairs simply by wanting to. The bar for a court-ordered property or welfare decision is high. And it requires evidence that your capacity is genuinely impaired. The world tilted sideways that if your capacity is not impaired, if you are simply an older person whom someone else has decided would be more convenient to manage, your best protection is to act. The world tilted and to do it before they do. I did not know any of this 6 months ago, I do now. The world tilted sideways. The kettle boiled that morning in April and I made my tea and I stood at the bench and I read those words on the notepad and I put it back exactly where I found it. And then I began quietly to count. The world tilted sideways. I counted the days I had. I counted the steps between where I was and where I needed to be. I counted on myself, which is something I had perhaps forgotten I was allowed to do. The world tilted sected the kitchen drawer in my new unit last week, the one beside the oven, because I needed a pen. And what I found there was exactly what I had put there, a pen. The world tilted sideways, a small notebook I had bought for myself, and the Willows community newsletter with the woodworking class time circled in blue ink. That was all, and it was enough.